So, Alex, by the way, Michael Girdley here. Welcome to another episode of The Outsiders. What are we on, number like 85 now? Or it's 9. It's number 9.
Take away the 5. We're on 8.
8? Oh, we're on 9. I think it's 9. Anyway, okay. So I understand from our text thread, and maybe we should just get this out in the open, that some of your friends thought I was too mean to you last week. Is that accurate?
No, they thought it was great. They just think that you were mean in general, not directed at me, just at the world.
Oh, okay. I think we need to recruit somebody who likes being the villain, because I don't really enjoy it. I mean, I can do it.
Who would be a good villain?
I don't know. We're taking candidates. If you're a listener and you would like to be a villain, we need I don't know, like a Nosferatu / Hulk Hogan type vibe. If somebody has something like that, I think that would totally work.
Well, you'll have to go easy today because I'm a little bit sad. We are selling the Peloton in the next couple of weeks.
What am I going to make fun of?
I don't know. We're going to put a plant back there or something so you can keep telling me that my plant's going to die.
Plastic plants, man. Way to go, especially when you have kids. Totally there.
Yeah.
And then Chris is out this week because he's got something going on, like having a kid. Really?
Small thing.
You're not taking this podcast seriously?
I told him to record from the hospital, and he apparently did not take my advice.
Instead of publishing the actual episode, we just have Chris's birth video. I think that's the way it should be.
That I should have made a cutout of Chris and put it behind me for the video. It would have been great. But
if you would have done a Chris on a Peloton cutout, that would have been 10 out of 10.
That would have. Great troll. I didn't have time. Some of us have
All right,
so
we got some stories to talk about. Much has happened in the week of tech in the past week. I feel like tech news and startup and business news has gotten better in the past week because I went and doing my usual thing, go back and look at the headlines, and they didn't suck this week. So I was like, this is cool.
There's definitely some interesting stuff happening. I'm excited to get into it. And now, just so everyone knows, it's just me and Michael this week. It's going to be 2 bald guys yelling at each other for 30 minutes. We'll see how it goes.
I have more hair than you do. That's terrible. Okay. Which one of these do you want to start with? Do Ozempic.
Okay.
Please do that one first.
Okay. Let's talk about Ozempic. So, for those of you who follow weight loss news, you may have heard about all the recent hype over Ozempic, also known as semaglutide. Basically, it's a weight loss medication that came out to treat diabetic patients. Somehow we talk about diabetes patients every week on this podcast, but it's an injectable medication. It basically keeps your blood glucose levels and your blood sugar in control, so you can eat all these different foods. And traditionally, they would spike your blood pressure, and then it would be impossible to lose weight. Now, because it keeps your blood sugar under control, you can lose weight, makes you feel fuller. It actually delays some of the stomach processing food. And what's happening is so many people are actually taking Ozempic that there's a shortage for actual diabetic patients. You have this whole population in the US of celebrities and individuals, myself included. I'm taking Ozempic currently as an experiment to see what happens. Yeah. It's become this hugely popular thing. It's almost like they call it the weight loss miracle. And it's created a shortage of actual Ozempic and semaglutide for real diabetic patients because all the non-diabetic patients like myself are taking it weekly. And what's happening now is people are experiencing huge rebounds. They didn't realize that they're supposed to be on this medication long-term. And so now you have all these people who were taking it just for weight loss. They're not diabetic. They said, oh, I'm going to take Ozempic. I'm going to lose 20, 30, 50 pounds, whatever it is. And they go off Ozempic because insurance stops covering it. They either become too skinny where their BMI is not over 30, which is one of the requirements, or they just can't afford it anymore. It can be upwards of $1,200 to $1,300 out of pocket for the name brand version of this. And then they rebound and they're gaining more weight and they're heavier than they were before they started the medication. And people are like, I don't know what happened. I went back to my old eating habits. And it's yeah, no shit. You didn't change anything while you were on the drug. You just had a drug that was blocking you from turning that sugar into fat. And now that's sort of the big thing is people are surprised that they're fatter than they were before they were taking Ozempic. So that's the news story that we're starting off with today.
So are you fat? I didn't think you were fat. Why are you taking this drug?
I've got 20 pounds of lovable weight to shred off before summer.
What for bikini season?
Yeah.
What is your BMI?
27.
What? So you're considered overweight by the BMI scale?
Technically, I'm overweight, although you would never guess unless you weighed me against my height.
Yeah.
So Ozempic.
So you've gone to you've done the American thing. You're taking a pill when hard work is required.
Yes. However, it's not a pill. You actually like inject yourself in your abdomen once a week using a real needle. I look like a heroin addict in my kitchen, like taking it out of the vial and putting it into my stomach. Yeah. I mean, there's very little long-term side effects. This drug has actually been around for like 50 years. It was developed in the 70s. So there's a lot of long-term studies that show it doesn't have long-term side effects, but short-term, it causes a lot of people nausea, vomiting, indigestion, heartburn. Like it actually creates some GI issues. I have not experienced any of that yet, knock wood. And and so yeah, we're trying it. We'll see. Maybe I just hope it like helps me melt off the fat a little bit faster than doing it naturally.
Wait, who's we? Your whole family's doing it?
No, it's just me. Yeah, I've got my 2-year-old. He's a little bit chunky. I'm giving him okay, I'm actually not going to say that on the pod or else like CPS is going to show up to my door next week.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm going to respond with standard Girdley, like, why don't you just eat better and exercise more?
No, you're
and then
not
you're
wrong.
going to tell me all food is unhealthy.
No.
And then I'm going to get I'm going to get in trouble for fat shaming.
No, in this case, you're right. I actually was telling a friend about this and he was like, wait, so you're telling me the US has modified food so much and people eat so shitty in the US that we now require an injectable medication to help people lose weight because of how poor our diets are. And I was like, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. Do you know what thalidomide is? Have you ever heard of thalidomide? Do you know what that is?
Is that the thing that helps you sleep?
No, thalidomide happened back in the 1950s, and it was prescribed as a wonder drug to help with morning sickness when women were pregnant. They kind of neglected to notice one aspect of thalidomide before they started to prescribe it, which was it caused massive birth defects in the babies that took it. And the reality is, in nature, like this, and this is total Girdley old man. I've really lost my hair, whereas you voluntarily lost yours. Like there is no such thing as a free lunch. That's what I'm gonna say. And thalidomide is like one of those things where you just have to think about it. Like everything has side effects. It's one of those things. So anyway, as your podcast buddy, like fucking eat some salads. That's what I have to tell you.
I am also dieting and working out alongside taking this miracle drug. But yes, it's like Ativan, right? Ativan was supposed to be the miracle anti-anxiety depression drug, and it turns out everyone just got addicted to it. So
yeah, far out, man. Well, you know, the funniest thing is I'm friends with like lots of doctors, for good or bad, and they are like the biggest pill poppers. Like you know, your reaction to be like, well, you know, hey, I'll just take this wonder pill and see what happens. But the reality is like, you know, I talked to a doctor this morning and he's like, yeah, you know, I've been taking statins. I'm like, oh yeah, really? And he's like, yeah, I didn't really need them. I didn't have high cholesterol or anything, but my buddy said I should take them, you know, my internist. And so I've been taking them for 3 years. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
I'm a big believer in biohacking your body. Like I believe that you should experiment with things. And so this for me is an experiment.
There's an amazing experiment. It's called eat a fucking salad. That's the experiment.
Sweet Green just opened down the block.
Yeah, like
They're only a mile
go
away.
find go to Sweet Greens, ask for the greens without the sweet in it, and then eat the food.
Oh man, actually that is funny. Now that you mention it, like Sweet Green in the most American fashion has basically the word sugar in its name, and it's a salad shop.
America is amazing. It's the best country in the world. But we ruin so many things. And one of them is health. It's
true.
just brutal.
It's true.
All right, let's move on. Can I talk about this one that was, I don't know if you saw me fill out the sheet this morning, but I was like, I got to talk about this one. And this story is that Salesforce, the $170 billion global leader in the CRM space, like a huge software company based out of San Francisco, and they have reportedly been paying actor Matthew McConaughey $10 million a year to act as a quote unquote creative advisor for the company. Despite having horrible like performance relative to expectations and laying off 8,000 people last month. So let me read a little bit more about this because it's just the craziest story I've ever heard.
Real quick, I have 3 things to say about this.
Wait, can I finish reading the story?
All right.
All right.
Get the bag.
You know, Well, what's the quote? Like the older I get, the younger they just say the same age. Like the older Matthew McConaughey gets, the dumber like software executives get. Like that's all I have to say about this. So anyway, here's more about the story. Salesforce struck a deal with actor Matthew McConaughey, according to the Wall Street Journal. It reportedly agreed to pay him $10 million a year to serve as a creative advisor and also TV pitchman. And he starred in a Salesforce ad that ran during the 2022 Super Bowl, donning an astronaut suit. Salesforce has already slashed 8,000 workers from its rank this year, but the cloud software company may be still paying millions to harness the star power of Matthew McConaughey. It is unclear what the terms of the contract are when the contract even began, and representatives for Salesforce declined insiders' request for comment, and on and on. It's just like, listen to this. Matthew McConaughey and the musician will.i.am, who has long been involved in the tech industry, have also reportedly taken part in high-level strategy discussions at Salesforce. So it's like, oh, are you kidding me?
I would just like to point out that Matthew McConaughey makes almost half of what Mark Benioff makes yearly. Like Mark is CEO of Salesforce. Total comp is $26 million a year. Matthew McConaughey, creative advisor to the co-CEOs, salary is $10 million a year. That's fucking unbelievable. Honestly, hats off to Matthew McConaughey. He secured the bag from Salesforce. I wish I had a job that paid me $10 million a year to be a fucking spokesperson or the face of the company. Like, that's incredible. You can't hate the player in this case.
Man, I think it's a testament to what happens when you have an audience like that, and he's a top 5 best known male actor in the United States, right? Like, you name your top 5 most well known, it's like Brad Pitt, him, George Clooney, like he's in there, and you can monetize the hell out of an audience. And like, I'll give him mad props to that. But you have to ask yourself, if you're the CEO of a company like Salesforce, you're like, should we spend $10 million a year on this? Or maybe like, snacks. I don't know, put it in the bank instead of firing 8,000 people. Like, come on.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely. I saw that headline and I was like, that can't be real. Like, this has got to be the best 2023 troll. And it's not. And the thing that's shocking to me is like, do we think Matthew McConaughey leads to higher closed CRM deals? Like, nothing adds up to me. Like, I don't understand celebrities being the spokesperson or the face of a enterprise CRM company that's going and selling B2B software. Like, what, you get into a room with like a big Fortune 100 company, you're like, by the way, guys, not only is our CRM software incredible, Matthew McConaughey is our creative advisor. And they're probably like, what the fuck? What is he advising on?
So I will tell you, I see this all the time, where in that bro world of high finance, like famous people and especially famous athletes, they open up doors like crazy. It's so I'll see it where like, and if you go look at it, it's really interesting. Like, go look at all the SPACs. There were all the SPAC. You remember all the SPACs? So these blank check companies that were going to take companies public, are going to go like take startups public and make millions for Chamath or whatever. They all had kind of one thing, a theme across them. They all would involve like one famous person, like the guy who started Tito's Vodka, or like famous NBA player, or like famous major league player. Because they knew, the guys that were like backing those things, they knew, okay, if we're going to maximize hype, we have to show up with somebody who has a big name. And if you show up with random 1980s baseball player, or the guy who invented, whatever, the ShamWow guy, and he's on your SPAC board, you're getting a meeting just because people want to meet the guy who hit a home run like in Fenway Park. And it's actually, dude, high finance is a bunch of bullshit, but that totally worked for all these folks.
SPACs were the best zero interest rate phenomenon. Like, basically you had shit companies with no revenue, no traction, just going public. And at one point I was supportive. I was like, look, we need more small to mid cap companies that people can go invest in, that have their financials open, that are doing 50 to a few $100 million in revenue a year. But these companies were just dog shit, like through and through, going public for the sake of going public. It's just one of those things where people needed more money to park. SPACs happen to be the vehicle for doing that. And has there been a successful SPAC? Like, are there any SPAC companies right now that have larger enterprise values now than when they first went public?
Yeah. Oh, first gone public? I doubt it, because it's just been a massive bear market. But there's some very profitable companies, like real businesses, like Getty Images is one. Like that went public for like $1 billion. Cvent is one that went public. So those are two like real actual companies. They're
Via
not like
SPAC?
bullshit cold fusion deals.
Hmm.
So that is one of the jokes I do all the time when like we're talking to investors or whatever. They'll be like, "Oh, well, we're so glad you do XYZ," and I'm like, "We're pivoting to cold fusion. We're going to take advantage of the SPAC market."
I don't even know what cold fusion is,
I don't
but
think that joke's very funny.
yeah, Getty Images is down about half from when they SPAC'd originally. They were at $30 a share when they first went public, and now they're at, they're more than half. They're at $6 a share. It's been a rough time.
Well, no, if they opened at 10, so I don't know what they opened at, but if they opened at 10, then it would be down 40%, which in today's market is not so terrible.
That's true.
Anywho,
That's
okay,
true.
let's get moving on. What do you want to do next? Do you want to do this data? OpenAI is not going to use customer data. That sounds interesting.
I think this one is good. So this just came out this morning, actually. Turns out OpenAI was using data from their API partners to train its model. So essentially, like if you were a company building an AI tool on top of the OpenAI APIs, for example, like their chat APIs, they were using all the data that your customers or you were actually inputting into the APIs and using it to train their own models, which seems not great without explicit consent beforehand. Like if I'm a company and I'm trying to build a proprietary, sort of AI model on top of OpenAI, and OpenAI is just like taking all of the inputs that I'm giving to the model and then like using it to make their model better, like that seems a bit of a just misalignment of interest between OpenAI and its partners. And so now addressing the criticism, they will no longer use customer data to train their models by default. They will if the customers opt into it beforehand. And OpenAI claims it was for service improvements. So who knows what that actually means though, and like what they're doing under the hood with that. They already can't control the output of ChatGPT. Like I don't know if they can control all the inputs that are coming from all their partners. So like how much can you trust is sort of up in the air. But this was this was sort of the big news of today. And now they want to be developer friendly. And look, I think they have a good API. I've played with it. I've got friends who have built stuff on top of it, but I don't know. Now it's like, do you trust them to be your underlying infrastructure if they're potentially just like ripping off all the data from you?
To some extent, it's what Google does every time you use their service, right? Like you give them all this data. I mean, I know they're looking at all my Google Drive stuff.
No, but it's not that. This is the equivalent. This is the equivalent of like AWS looking at all of your code base. Like you built all of your app and all of your software on top of AWS or Google Cloud Platform or Azure. And they're just like taking all of the code you wrote and like building it into their model to make their platforms better.
Okay, so maybe I'm missing about the difference. Starting today, OpenAI says that it won't use any data submitted through its API for service improvements, including AI model training, unless a customer or organization opts in. Isn't that what Google does? Like, I give them all my pictures, and then they figure out where I've been, and then they show me ads for Dick's Last Resort in South Carolina.
But that's you direct to consumer. I'm not talking about me typing in a query into OpenAI and them saving it. I'm talking about like me building... like me taking my customer data as a company and I run it through the OpenAI API to say, hey, like do some magical generative AI with this thing and give me an output. And then they're taking all of those inputs and using them that are coming from another company's customers, not you direct to OpenAI. Like I understand if OpenAI wants to use the shit that I type into ChatGPT or their image generating service directly. But if I'm using a service like Vowel, for example, which is like AI for meeting, and I think they're built on top of OpenAI, and ChatGPT is using all of the transcripts and things like that from Vowel, that is different. Like OpenAI doesn't own the end customer. You look confused.
I don't know. I'm having a slow day. But I don't know.
Someone's got to understand this one. Yeah,
Who cares?
It's just one of those things like if you're a company and you've partnered with another company, like it's like if I build my app on top of AWS, I don't expect AWS to rip the code. Like I expect them to run their services as they promised. Without explicit permission, I don't expect like Amazon's AWS team to be looking at my code base.
Okay, but let's say this. Let's say you make API calls. So there's probably two parts to this. There's the actual individual customer data that you're feeding into the models. I'm cool with, that shouldn't be something that your app funneling in there is something that GPT is going to look at. But like if you're going to be making API calls and it's going to be doing things to the large language model, or the equivalent of AWS is like, let's say your app starts to make certain types of calls that cause us to run out of AWS capacity, just hypothetically. Like AWS and OpenAI should be totally available to use that data. So maybe it's like, okay, well, metadata is fine, but like using individual stuff, like, okay, I could see how that makes sense.
You make a good point. That's fair.
Look, hey, the listeners want us to argue, so just call me stupid.
That's a fucking terrible take. It's a lot more nuanced than that. You don't know what you're talking. When's the last time you built an app, Girdley?
Do I look like somebody that does actual work? At a certain point, you just look at other people's work. That's what happens.
That's true. Copy and pasters.
Speaking of copy and pasting, okay, let me do this one now. So this one's fun. Online fan magazines, online science fiction, niche publications, all this stuff. I don't know if you guys know this, but they run off of users' submittals. So this is called AI and ChatGPT are causing a problem, which is you can use them just like people used, to write stories for Sammy the Fastest Squirrel. You remember him last week? Everybody's famous children's book squirrel.
I remember.
Oh, that was such a good bit. If you haven't listened to last week, we talked about a guy who was using the AI system to write children's books, and we made a joke that it turned into Sammy the Fastest Squirrel who took over the forest. It was such a good bit. All right, so here's the article from The Verge. AI-generated fiction is flooding literary magazines, but it's not fooling anyone. Prominent science fiction and fantasy magazine Clarkesworld announced it would pause submissions after a flood of AI spam, and it's not the only outlet getting AI-generated stories. A short story titled The Last Hope first hit Shayla Williams' desk in early January. William, the editor of Asimov's science fiction magazine, reviewed the story and passed on it. At first, she didn't think much of it. She reads and responds to writers daily as part of her job, receiving anywhere from 700 to 750 stories a month. But when another story, also titled The Last Hope, came in a couple weeks later by a writer with a different name, she became suspicious. And by the time she got multiple more Last Hopes a few days later, she realized what was going on, which was people were using ChatGPT to throw in lottery tickets to these different zines and hope that their AI-generated story got published. Their amount of stories for consideration from January to February went up almost 30% because people are spamming them with Sammy, the science fiction fastest squirrel, generated AI stories, and it's caused them to have to stop taking user submissions because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What do you think?
There's some weird side effects that are going to come out of the open access to AI, like generative AI. There's going to be so many weird things that we don't expect to break or that people are going to try to game or scam. Like anything that could be monetizable is about to become 10x more easy to monetize. And we're going to see more and more weird stories like this where someone says, I used, OpenAI or ChatGPT to like generate all these things. And it's now, it only takes 5 seconds. You type in a query and it spits out what you want. And we're going to see all these like weird things break now. I mean, I assume we see like a lot of plagiarized content on the internet. User generated content is going to be probably the first thing to hit the shitter, because how do you know what's real, what's fake, what's been generated by AI? Same thing with like Instagram profiles and social. That's another place where like these deep fakes are coming out and they are legit. It is sometimes hard to tell that it's a fake person. It's a fake voice. There's been some joke ones where you see like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan having a conversation, but it's like very clearly a parody. But you can imagine where that goes into a much more serious topic with like advertisements. And we're seeing advertisements that look real, like where someone like those two people, Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, it looks like they were supporting the product or actually like sharing it. And so people are seeing these ads where Joe's not actually saying, but deepfake Joe is saying like, I support this ice bath or this blah, 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 or like this prescription, go to Amazon and go get it. And people are believing it because it looks real. So we're going to find all these weird edge cases where we never expected things to just like rip at the seams, and they were never ready for this amount of volume that are just going to pull apart.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, if you watch the history of tech, everything in software or software related eventually goes to zero, right? Like, so communication, right? It used to have to pay to send a telegram. Email is basically free, right? Storage went the same way. Like when I was a younger man, Like you want to buy like 100 megabyte like hard drive, it's like $500. Now you get 100 megabytes. Like you're like, I don't know, do I really need 128 or do I need 256 gigs on my phone?
And it's so cheap.
And like the idea of like, we used to run out of storage, right? We have like files everywhere, but now it's basically free. Like whoever, I don't care. I don't even know how much storage is on this PC, and who cares? Like it's all somewhere. But you're seeing the same thing here where like phone calls basically went to free. Like, do you know you used to have to pay for just his phone calls when I was a kid? Now, like you just jump on this Zoom thing and it just magically happens for basically for free. So the same thing's happening for content. And we're just watching it happen here where like Twitter content, social content, and like the things people are putting on TikTok or whatever, like it's all going to free, right? Because it's like being too cheap and too easy to generate. It's just the way it does as software and computation happens. And I think the greatest example is we're actually making the idea of beauty go to free, right? So I don't know if you've seen this, but TikTok has a filter now. Have you seen the TikTok filter that'll take you from like a 4 and make you a 10? Have you seen this?
Yeah. Tinder profiles are not going to be there. Everyone's going to get catfished. Next 5 years, every single person's going to have 10 catfishing stories.
Yeah. Airbrushing totally goes to zero, right? It's all going to zero. So, that's just the way this works. And that's how society advances. But some people are going to get hurt. Like if you're somebody that makes money by generating unique content and getting paid for it, like your days are numbered.
Yeah,
like,
I agree with that. I also think like anything that required creative behind it is now about to get a lot cheaper to produce. So anything that traditionally required, like that was very expensive, let's say architecting a home, you're still going to need an architect, but the level of speed in which a top 10% architect can go and create diagrams and drawings and engineer things and like put it all together, even interior designers, like if they know exactly what they want, they can type it into a query and say, for this house, I need wood floors that are this tone with like these walls and this backsplash. And like AI is going to spit out exactly the design board that they need in seconds. And like anything creative is going to go, like you said, to zero, get really cheap. The people who are going to win are the top 10% at leveraging these tools to expand their output by 100x. Because like as things get cheaper, you need to do more of them at a higher velocity. And so anything that required creative is about to get a lot cheaper. And there's going to be a lot of money made in this sort of battle of AI for companies that are building the picks and axes to detect AI as well. Like, being able, even if it's not accurate, it's going to be really hard at the beginning. It's probably not going to be correct in any measure. But if you're a company that's building tools to combat, like artificially generated things on the internet and alerting, whether it's like companies or advertisers or consumers, if something was actually generated via AI, and you can sell that into enterprises, like you're probably going to make a shit ton of money. There will be a lot of really large companies built at the infrastructure layer and very few companies in each individual niche vertical that are built, like whether it's marketing or architecture or legal or whatever it is, for solving those specific use cases.
World's going to change, baby. That's all I got to say. All right, we got time for one more. Can we please talk about banning TikTok, or do you want to do one of these nuanced things?
No. Let's talk about TikTok, because there's 2 TikTok stories this week. Like one is that we might ban TikTok, but 2 is TikTok's rolling out like screen time control because they know it's fucking terrible for teenagers to be scrolling the app all day. So like, which of those 2 do you want to start with?
Well, I have a cool story to talk about TikTok screen time. So do that one first.
Okay, so TikTok announced that they're rolling out new screen time controls for specifically for teens. If you're an adult, you can still doom scroll forever, however long you want. But if you're a teenager, what'll happen now is if you're under 18, you get an automatic time limit of 60 minutes per day. And once the 60 minutes per day is reached, your parents or you, I guess if you have the passcode, have to enter a passcode to keep scrolling. Same thing if you're under 13. I guess there are TikTok users who are under 13, which is kind of terrifying. And so, if a screen time limit is reached, a parent or guardian will need to set or enter an existing passcode to enable 30 more minutes of watch time. So TikTok knows that it's addicting, and they're just like feeding whatever shit propaganda through the curated newsfeed that they want to US teenagers and even like preteens. And they're sort of doing these like baby steps at a time to try not get banned. And we'll talk more about them potentially getting banned in a second. But they know it's so bad for you to the point where they like have to put in an automated screen time feature to like stop kids from scrolling for more than 60 minutes per day. And also like newsflash, 60 minutes out of your waking hours of like 16 hours of wake time is a lot of fucking time in your day to be sitting on the phone and scrolling TikTok and looking at, dumb videos or cat memes or whatever else the CCP is pushing on our teenagers in the US. And so That's the new feature that they're launching. You know, they're more family friendly now, you know, air quotes family friendly, since they've got screen time control. I'm curious, Michael, for you, because you have teenagers, like, you know, I'm sure they're scrolling TikTok all day. Like, I'm super curious to get your perspective on all of this.
Oh, you want to hear? I mean, our 17-year-old does not have access to TikTok. Our 13-year-old, for special reasons, does have access to TikTok. But neither of those apps is the problem. Do you want to know what the problem is?
Yeah.
YouTube. They're on freaking YouTube 24/7. Like, it is, there are days where their phones are showing TikTok for 8, 10, 12 hours. Wow. And does that make me a bad parent? Hell yeah. but if you have teenagers, you will understand. You can't, when they're little kids, you can do whatever you want. And parents can tell them how it's going to be. When they're teenagers, you just, like, you got to try your best. And some things you win and some things you lose a lot.
Are they at least watching, like, interesting content on YouTube? Or is it just like fucking Minecraft videos and, you know, Twitch streamers?
You know, here's the good thing. The good thing is when they first start out, it's like brain dead, you know, Dr. Disrespect, garbage, playing Minecraft and just this most annoying stuff. But you see it actually transitioning over time as the older one has gotten older. Like, it's much more interesting kind of widespread content. And he'll come in and tell me about facts and things that he's read. So, like, the universe is healing naturally with him.
As you get older.
And I attribute that totally to good genetics and parenting, of which I was at least, you know, partially 50% a part of. And so it's getting there. But, like, look, I think TikTok's a total disaster. And have you heard my strategy to fix my TikTok addiction? Do you know what I did?
You curated your feed to be only Spanish tutors. So you go through and it's like, hola, el color es azul. And you're like, fuck yeah, I know what that means. And that's your whole day on TikTok.
It's like, let's conjugate verbs. And so, like, yeah, now, you know what makes me not addicted to TikTok? It feels like work. So, but the other thing that's terrible about all these platforms is they all figure out very quickly that I'm like a 50-year-old married man. And within like 3 minutes, it's bikini pictures, like all the time.
There's a lot of those.
And like, I have to intentionally curate my feed on all these sites. Instagram still is like, hey, check this out. You'll really enjoy this. And I'm like, I know I will, but you can't show me this. Like, I don't want to see this.
Yeah. You have to like swipe away really quick for the algorithm to be like, oh, he doesn't like that. Let's show him dudes in bikinis next. See if he likes that. Oh, nope. Swipe on that really quickly.
No. Definitely not. Look, I think TikTok, I like that the US government is going after TikTok. Like, I'm in favor of this. Like, I think that we need to control our own degeneracy here in this country. We should not outsource it to other countries. This is not a t-shirt factory. We should be doing this in the United States. And I do like, that's the other story we had, that the US House panel approves bill giving Biden the power to ban TikTok. But here's the worry with this, which is, and I know it's bullshit, the slippery slope argument. If you let him ban one of these things, what's next? Like, are we going to be banning sweet greens next because it has sweet in the name? You just don't know. But in all seriousness, like, that is the worrisome thing about this. Like, TikTok, for all of its dirty and addictive kind of qualities, and the fact that the CCP clearly has people working, you know, on the algorithm and is showing something different in China than they are in the United States in terms of quality, you know, of content for kids. You know, you do have a situation where it's like, okay, well, there is good stuff on this platform, right? I've watched a lot of things on TikTok that are educational, that are news, that are things that I want to be seeing about what's going on in Ukraine or Southeast Asia, or things that aren't on the news. You know, do you start to set a bad precedent because you're going to do that on Twitter next, or are you going to do that on other platforms? And that's not a world I want to live in. So it's not as cut and dry as I think you look at.
No, it's not apples to oranges there either, because like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube are not controlled by the Communist Party of China. And so like, I think it's not the content that we're serving to kids is the problem. It's the fact that like the CCP has access to this app, which is used by 100 million Americans, and they could have a backdoor. They can feed whatever they want into the algorithm and like drive behavior certain ways. And they know that it's a problem. Like, they know that TikTok in the US is bad for your brains because it's not the same way in China. In China, it's an educational app for kids. And like, so they know that TikTok is influencing kids' development, and like the domestic version of TikTok is just so different. And so I support us banning, like, this is almost, I would argue that TikTok in the US is a form of international terrorism. Like, it is them attacking our kids and our youth in the US from a foreign entity.
Keep going. This is going to make a great YouTube clip.
I mean, it is like, look, I mean, you know, there's domestic terrorists and there's international terrorists. And so obviously, like, you have another country and a government controlling content that is being served to kids in the US. Like, how else can you describe that besides a form of cyber terrorism? And so, like, the fact that they can put whatever they want into the hands of 100 million of users in the US, I don't know how many of those are teens or kids, but like, let's face it, adults are very susceptible to manipulation as well. They can say whatever they want and serve whatever they want, whenever they want. It doesn't matter whether the TikTok US entity is decoupled from the Chinese entity. There is never going to be that true separation. So TikTok either needs to like sell itself off to a fully controlled US entity, or they need to get banned and someone will take its place to push short form videos to the US population.
You know who's actually doing a really good job with short form videos is YouTube. And it's a different experience than TikTok, but it's actually really good. There's some good stuff on there.
Yeah, the content is good. I don't think they still have the number of users that TikTok does, but like, you look at China, they don't allow our apps to be served there. It's the same thing. Like, you protect your country's population, and like, you wall off international companies or governments or whoever it is that pose a threat to citizens. And like, TikTok is definitely a threat. Anyone who doesn't think it is naive to what the CCP is willing to do. They put a fucking spy balloon over the country and just like let that shit fly around. And so that, you know, to think that like they're not looking at stuff through TikTok and like downloading all of our shopping behaviors and preferences and like what people are searching, getting access to devices, like who knows what they could possibly be doing. I'm a huge support of the government banning TikTok. I don't think it's going to lead down a slippery slope of us banning US entities, like actual US companies that are serving a product that people want to consume. And so I think this is a net positive if they end up going forward with this.
I just hope after they ban TikTok, I want them to go in and ban the second worst social media network that's on in America right now.
Snapchat?
Masculinity Twitter. Oh. Have you ever waded into masculinity Twitter?
Yeah, it's fucking awful.
God.
Oh God.
It's awful. I guess we talked about it last week, but it's the worst. It's just incels quoting to see who can be the most masculine. Yeah. And their god is Andrew Tate.
Oh God.
It's just like the worst.
Yeah, the alpha male grind set tweets of like, I woke up at 5 a.m. I did 150 push-ups before I sent 17 emails and I made $10,000. Like, what did you do this morning?
The world is designed to hold you back.
Yeah, Alex, you're stuck in the matrix.
To stop you from being the real man. Check out what real men do. Here is my my cigar, and here's a car I bought, and here's my girlfriend. Like, it's just like, come on.
And here's my course.
You know what real men do? They have families and take care of their kids and earn nice livings and respect the world with love. That's what they do. Like, they do the exact opposite of all the crap you're doing.
Except for the one woman who runs one of those like alpha male pseudonymous accounts, like with one of the statue avatars. There is like, have you seen like the meat? There's like some Twitter account where basically it's like, eat meat. Our ancestors like never ate processed foods, and like all these like alpha bro grind set guys like follow this account and retweet it. And it's like really cringe content. And someone ended up figuring out that it's like this woman who runs the account behind the scenes and like sells a supplement on the side. And that's kind of her grift. And she like sells it to the alpha bros.
Yeah, I think there's a good life rule there, which is if anybody is taking an audience and selling supplements, we are at a 0% ratio right now for that being someone that you should pay attention to. Think about everybody who sells supplements and has an audience. Like, it's 0%. Liver King.
Yeah. Oh, Liver King.
What's the name of that crazy guy who lives with you in Austin that does InfoWars?
Oh, fucking Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. He sells supplements.
My neighbor.
Like, if somebody's selling supplements, like, do the exact opposite of whatever they're telling you.
Yeah. When I get bored, like, I stroll over to Alex Jones's house and we think of a few conspiracies together.
What a lunatic. All right. In that note, hey, we got to end right now so we can be under 40 minutes.
Amazing.
Thanks everybody for being here. If you enjoyed this, send this to one friend. Click subscribe on all your devices multiple times. The more downloads we can get, the more people will hopefully listen to it, and the more they can hear our opinions on stuff, and we'll keep having fun. So
love it.
Thanks everybody.